Okay, I'm gonna just jump in because, as you know, the first bit is always logistics and stuff. So, welcome to the fourth and final session of Recruitment Bootcamp Mental Health Staff Edition. And today we'll be talking about onboarding and staff development. As always, we want to do a land acknowledgement that this meeting was planned on and is being presented from unceded territories of various Indigenous, Native American, and First Nations peoples. And we humbly offer gratitude and respect to the elders, past and present citizens of these tribes, and to all Indigenous peoples that are historically and contemporarily tied to the lands that make up what is now called the United States. I won't go too in depth. You all know all these slides. We're recording things. The slides will be available, etc. Reach out to Mariah if you need anything. You all know all this stuff. Oh, why aren't we moving forward? There we go. Please, again, you all know these guidelines. Zoom etiquette, basically. Enjoy this time. We're going to hang out. It's going to be great. We encourage you to share. Again, you all know all about this. It's the fourth time. We're ACU. Thanks for being here. Check out everything ACU has on offer. We're here on behalf of the Star Center. This is your Star Center team. Just want to call out some minor staff, not minor, they're big, it's big. Suzanne, who you have seen on a couple of these, is now our VP of Workforce Development, and our fearless leader, Michelle, Doctora Michelle Fernandez Gabilondo, is our Director of Workforce Development. That's a promotion. So that's exciting.
Thank you.
Of course. And then again, here are more slides that you know about. We're in a learning collaborative. You've seen it across these 4 weeks. You know what we're doing. We're building a strategy, we're building a process, and we're building relationships. Again, you know what this is. We just like it to be consistent and for everyone to have them throughout. You know our learning objectives and our outcomes. So let's jump in this first bit of, does anyone have any questions about the homework? And this can be from the homework throughout the whole session. If you revisited an assignment and if something came up, feel free to bring it up, or we can just focus if you had any questions from last week's coursework. Any successes, any challenges anyone wants to share? You can put it in the chat too if that's more comfortable.
And I think while people are thinking, if they do have questions, Helen, I just wanted to announce I put an article in the discussion board that talked about emotional compensation and organizations using that. So it really is more just like building a good culture in your organization, but the importance of that, really looking at it as part of that compensation. And I did put in what I posted, this doesn't replace a living or thriving wage. It doesn't replace that, but it's a huge part of the retention that organizations are using now. So I did post that, and I'm still looking up information on the importance of telehealth and behavioral health, so I can post those. As Helen said, it's just been a little bit busy with the transition.
Awesome. Thank you so much for posting those. All right, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat or any hands raised or anyone off mute, but yeah, feel free to, if you think of anything, feel free to put it in the chat or just unmute yourself or flag us. So we're gonna have some breakouts time and larger group discussion time later in the session, but we just sort of wanted to jump in with our discussion of onboarding before that. I know we usually give you time to connect with your peers at the top, but switching things up for this final session. So we're going to talk about onboarding. The first thing to know and have at the top of our mind is that onboarding is not orientation. For new hires, orientation is that one-time event welcoming them to your organization, whereas onboarding is a series of events that includes orientation, and that helps them understand how to be successful in their day-to-day job and how their work contributes to the overall mission of the organization. So at orientation, new hires are formally introduced to your organization, its culture, mission, etc. And that should be conducted on the first day or within the first few weeks of employment. And information is delivered through presentation, question and answer sessions, etc. Whereas, again, onboarding is this longer process. and employees are thoroughly introduced to their whole department and the organization as a whole. They learn the culture and the objectives of the organization by participating in meetings and different starter projects with coworkers. And managers should really schedule regular check-in meetings with new employees so that they can get comfortable talking with one another. And over time, they'll learn the specifics of their role and responsibilities, etc. So it's important to have an onboarding plan that focus on what matters most to each element of a new behavioral health provider's position, with the goal of helping them make connections within the organization and helping them understand their day-to-day tasks, and again, how their work contributes to the overall mission. And we're going to talk more about what that can look like. So again, it's this entire process, and the end result should be having someone become fully part of your health center's culture. And that's not to say having someone assimilate into your organizational culture, but instead to feel included and to feel like part of the organization. And then we also highlight, because of the unique role of health centers, that it's about more than integrating them just into your organization, but into your community as well, if they're new to that community. Of course, if they're from there, you don't necessarily have to do that. But if someone is, if you work at a rural health center and someone is new to that community, we all know rural communities can be pretty tight knit. And so part of the onboarding process should be introducing them beyond the four walls of the health center, etc. And you're setting expectations as well. You're showing them what they can expect from you as well as what you expect from them, and that can help build that trust. And then the integration piece is having them be part of the organization and the community, bring them in on all the aspects that make sense for their position. And again, that's where that culture piece comes in last, as they actually become part of the culture. And I know I said this on the last slide. Oh, go for it, Michelle.
I just wanted to add, Helen, so, and obviously this recruitment boot camp, the point is we pulled out these key areas that are very important to the behavioral health and mental health workforce, but onboarding is a huge, huge part of it. So it's not just onboarding within the department, your behavioral health department, but it's onboarding within the entire organization as well. And I will say, I think just more so historically, a lot of people that work in mental health have really felt like an afterthought in the healthcare field for a long, long time. So this is one way that you're showing them the value that they bring and how much you appreciate and support them by doing this more comprehensive onboarding process. So yeah, I just wanted to to put that in there.
No, that makes total sense. And thank you so much for bringing it up. It actually reminds me of a really close friend of mine from elementary school. I reconnected with her a little while ago, and it turns out she works as a behavioral health provider like down the street from me, which is amazing. And we had this whole conversation, but she didn't realize that she worked that like she knew she worked at a health center, but she didn't realize the health center movement was this whole big thing, and that like there's a PCA, and we live in Colorado, so there's a regional primary care association as well. And then there's these NTAPs. So I think part of onboarding anyone, but I think again, specifically behavioral health people who might not have had as much of an opportunity to like hear about the health center movement and what we look like that's part of what we're onboarding folks into, is like, yes, our health center and our community, but the larger health center movement as well, and helping them get plugged into the resources that they have. There's so many free resources for health center staff. And so we're helping to get them plugged into that and show them that they're part of they're part of our mission, but they're also part of this like larger nationwide network and mission. And honestly, like after our conversation, she was like, yeah, I've always loved my work, but I'm so excited to be part of this larger network that I had no idea existed. And that's something that, again, like it's lucky that I reconnected with her and we had this conversation, but it's something that whoever was onboarding her could have done as well. So these are the kinds of things to be thinking about as you're thinking about how are we, highlighting and onboarding folks. And again, taking into account that behavioral health, mental health piece of like, what is the kind of environments you've been working in, and is what we're doing different. And that integration piece I think is so key. So thank you, Michelle. So again, like I said, when we're talking about integration, we want to make sure that we're not talking about assimilation. And so when you're bringing someone in, you're doing that because they are bringing value to your health center. You wouldn't have hired them if they weren't going to be bringing value. And so you want to, of course, you want to make sure that they're aligned with your value. But again, you've chosen this person because they are. And so you want to show the rest of the staff that like you see their value as well as showing them that you see their value. And then, like communicating that is part of how we do integration as opposed to assimilation. And so not going for like, we often hear about culture fit. And when we hire and onboard for culture fit, we can end up perpetuating this sort of like homogenous culture that actually isn't very Jedi oriented. And so it's not necessarily about hiring and onboarding for culture fit, but instead finding a way to show how this person who you've hired will bring value to the organization, and helping them see that, helping them see that you see that, and helping the rest of the staff see that. And again, we're going to talk, we have a couple more slides about assimilation. So it's important to think about having a workforce that looks like our communities. And that's of course important, but even when we have that workforce, sometimes people feel as if they have to leave their culture at the door. And so thinking about how we create a culture and an onboarding culture that allows employees to feel like they can show up fully and authentically, and that we're not making this whatever minoritized group resemble the majority group, but instead that we're allowing for people to show up, and not only allowing but encouraging people to show up as their true selves with their true lived experiences, and that we're blending and celebrating those differences, but also welcoming this blending of different cultures. And so when we think about what that can look like, some examples are rigid expectations of how professionalism is defined. I think this is going a little bit out of vogue, but I think like I still hear of it sometimes, but thinking about like what hair is professional, like anybody's hair is professional. This idea that if you're a person with a certain hair type, C4 hair, that you can't be wearing it naturally. That's the kind of thing that we need to get away from in terms of like what is professional. Or tattoos. That's a big one, I think, as millennials and Gen Z become more and more part of the workforce. I've heard people say that they, even if nothing is explicitly said, they have felt their career being like dampened or like tamped by the fact that they have tattoos, again, even though there's no policies. And I'm not saying there should be policies about tattoos, but yeah, thinking about what is professionalism, and how, and like allowing for different ways for people to show up in that. And Michelle, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so this question has actually come up recently a lot in the different trainings that I've done with health centers, talking about how, especially a lot of the younger workforce coming in with tattoos or like, different color hair or things like that. And the question has been, our patients have an issue with that. So we bring that up to our staff. And I constantly remind them that there's also a lot of cultural aspects to that. So very big assumptions making that it's not connected to someone's culture, but whether it is or whether it isn't, on my personal level, I'm like, everybody's going to end up being tattooed in no time and stuff like that. But if this really is something that is just like a make or break in your organization, I say you have to really make it very clear for people, because then they can make the decision, this is not the right place for me. This is not the place where I'm able to, show up authentically or be able to express myself in this way. Again, as Helen said, definitely, our suggestion is not to have those type of policies, but when you have anything like that, those are things where that transparency and that clear, explanations, like this is coming from patients, this is why we're doing this. But the more and more, I feel like this is such a minimal part that you don't want to lose someone who's excellent over, certain sense of their self-expression or culture.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And like you're saying, if it is spelled out really clearly, and again makes that call out to like, we serve a population that has expressed this as a problem for them, then like you're saying, people can decide if it's there for them, or like I know a lot of people my age who just cover up their like they're not actually going to leave an organization because of that, but that that it's an expectation from the start rather than something that like comes up and feels like it's not being um you know that's the word I'm thinking of, like monitored, like like that it's I am really having aphasia today, but that only certain people are being called
That
out.
it's selective on who
Selective,
can,
thank
yeah.
you, that is wrong. Yes, excellent. So yeah, so thinking about again, and it goes beyond hair and tattoos, but the way we dress and like all these kinds of things. This is part of that onboarding process that will take. It's like not necessarily that something that gets you could just go back to your organization and write it down. This is part of that like Jedi process of thinking through your processes and your cultural or your organizational culture. We just want to make sure that we're thinking about it as we're thinking about the onboarding. And again, some of those other things I already talked about, culture fit, but this idea also of like the way it's always been done is the only way it can be done. Rewarding conformity when people who like, yeah, again, just fit right in and look like everyone else, what in whatever way, are the ones who are rewarded. And when we're not willing to like talk about the problems that might be coming up, so finding ways to do conflict management in a productive way rather than just avoiding conflict and letting those bubble and boil underneath the surface, and or letting minoritized groups sort of again have to assimilate rather than being like, hey, this doesn't work for me in whatever way. So a big part of what you're doing in the onboarding process is you're building trust. And if there isn't that trust there, that's a really quick way to have folks leave, as they're being in those first month, 3 months, 6 months, when they're like deciding, did I make the right decision? And is this the place I should be? And so part of building that trust is through this onboarding process. It's the bridge between recruitment and retention, is how we like to refer to it. And so this is your chance to like, you've recruited them, and this is your chance to like retain them and keep them in. And a big part of that is communication and making sure that it's continuous and two-way, so that it's not just like we're spouting what our ideals are and you don't get a say or whatever it is, but it really does make everyone better at their jobs and it increases satisfaction. And so thinking about different ways to do that continuous and two-way communication is through emails, staff meetings, postings in the staff lounge, conducting employee engagement surveys, having feedback cards available, and being intentional with everyday conversations as well. Like there's all these formalized ways, again, the emails, all that stuff, but every conversation you have is part of the onboarding and trust building element. And so part of this is you're showing them that they're needed and that you really value that they're there. You're challenging them to continue to grow even when they're new. You're like, hey, yeah, you're new, we want to make sure that you're being stimulated enough to that this is going to work out. And then recognizing them as individuals and that people have different needs, and people communicate in different ways. So again, we like to offer lots of different options for your ways of communication. We think it should be, like it says on the slide, continuous. And there's so many things that you can think of as communication, whether it's hosting listening sessions, stay interviews. We suggest that folks do a stay interview at the 3-month mark from when they are hired, and then at the year mark from when they were hired, and then annually at that year mark. So having those formal conversations, but then also having that opportunity, those, like I said, that their manager, supervisors meeting with them really regularly when they first get hired, and then those can titrate off, etc. And then also, again, in terms of thinking about having this really intentional communication, it's important that the communication is positive. And again, that's not like, as we've said in this learning collaborative before, we're not talking about toxic positivity. We're not saying, again, I just said face the conflict. We're not saying don't face the conflict, but we're saying think about what we're saying and how we're saying it. And if we're having a frustrated day, it's valid to share that, and we want to be honest and transparent, but also it is important to think about how we're saying it and who we're saying it to, and who within our staff it's like appropriate to sort of share that with. So yeah, this is really critical. We also, again, bi-directional communication. We want, when people do come to us with any kinds of suggestions or maybe troubles they're having or problems, we want to make sure that we're open to that and we're listening, learning, and adapting. And then we also in this section just want to, again, this is kind of a Jedi piece, but thinking about, we know that language around various marginalized identities, racism, ableism, etc., is always changing, and we aren't, like, no one can keep up all the time with every single different thing, but we do want to be thoughtful and careful about the language we're using that sort of shows who we are as an organization. So like, I know this one's kind of specific, and you know, again, we don't all necessarily have to I don't know. It's not like this is a like terrible, you're terrible if you do this, or like I'm, you know, whatever. But when medical professionals are talking about pregnancy and only refer to women, I get a little rankled. I'm like, oh, are we not like a justice informed, socially conscious organization that knows that people of all genders can get pregnant? And so that it's those kinds of things that we're thinking about. And it doesn't, you don't even have to make a big fuss of like, we know that people of all genders can get pregnant. We just say like pregnant people instead of pregnant women and things like that. And so again, just being conscious of all these different things that are coming up and that affect our patient populations as well as our staff populations. Again, like if you've just hired a behavioral health professional who uses a wheelchair and you say like wheelchair bound people, that's going to set off a little bell of like, oh, they are not that like disability rights informed. So again, and we can post a link in the dashboard of a resource that we use at the Star Center that is constantly being updated to help sort of think about, yeah, the kinds of language we're using around that. But when we think about how we're communicating and what communication looks like, part of it is that justice lens.
And this is also for behavioral health providers a really big thing, because many times too, even to have your license, a lot of your continuing education is specifically around this, like what is appropriate language, you know, all of those different things. I know in DC, when you go to renew your social work license, you have to have, I don't remember exactly what it is, but a substantial number of continuing education, cultural humility, and also understanding language. And if new things come through the, you know, like the state, or DC is not a state, but whoever's your licensing board will contact you and be like, and now you have to do. So, you know, you're also working with a group of people who are continuously required to keep up with this. So knowing that across the organization is important.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So I think I've like covered the why, but in case you were like, wait, Helen, why are we even talking about onboarding? The reasons are that it integrates the new employee into your organization, it sets those clear expectations, it helps productivity occur more quickly, and it reduces turnover, which is what we're all about, because we know that turnover is expensive and we want to spend more time and money on the programming that works rather than constantly trying to recruit new folks. So this is an example of an onboarding model that we got from SHRM. And so we can think about this as well of like, okay, so you've selected the person and then we're helping them become effective within their role. We're helping them understand their role more clearly. We're helping them be integrated within our organization. We're helping them know what our organizational culture is, and then we've successfully onboarded them. So this is a model that we can think about when we're creating or updating our onboarding checklist, which is something we'll talk about quickly in a moment. This is another to think about the 4 C's of onboarding, in terms of compliance, teaching those basic legal and policy, SOPs, et cetera, all those rules, regulations, make sure that we're clarifying so that folks understand the expectations, their roles, responsibilities, sharing our culture, vision, mission, values, and then helping that connection, that interpersonal relationship and community connection. And so here are some tips for successful onboarding. And again, this is applicable to anyone, but with our behavioral health staff, these are folks who, again, like they very deeply understand human connection and human emotion. That is their whole job. And so a big part of it for this group of folks is to show that we really value that. We want to make sure that they feel integrated, welcomed, and that they know that they can do their jobs effectively, because that's what anyone wants to be doing. So we encourage folks to assign a mentor or like a buddy. It's kind of nice to have someone who is not your direct supervisor, who you can ask what you think of as like the stupid questions. Of course, there are no dumb questions. All questions are good. But when you're new in an organization, it's kind of nice to have someone who's like not evaluating you, to be like, hey, where was the coffee again? I know somebody showed me yesterday, but I learned a lot yesterday, so I forgot, or whatever the question is. And then making sure that we're assigning a person for each onboarding activity and a realistic timeline. I think having that element of like accountability in terms of like, I was trained on this by so and so, or onboarded in this by so and the timeline for it was this, can really help us be like, yes, I feel supported in this, both like I have a person to go to for this, and I understand what my timeline, like how much time I'm supposed to spend being onboarded in this area. Set those expectations and goals, making sure that people know like where we're headed is really important. Like we've said over and over again, arranging social interactions and allowing for time to socialize with your coworkers. It could even just be like, hey, on Tuesday we're gonna have snacks at 10 a.m. and for like 15 minutes you can get to know this person, and then obviously they can get to know you all more deeply later, but making sure that there's that time for people to be introduced and feel like they are being welcomed at least a bit. And then conducting those weekly check-in calls or meetings with that supervisor or manager. And these again can taper off to bi-monthly or monthly over the first few months. But when you're really new, it's nice to be able to be like, yes, okay, I accomplished these goals we set out. What's my next steps, etc. And feel like you're sort of like being cradled as you join an organization. And then again, provide opportunities for peer interaction outside, with not outside the community, but outside of the organization within the community, and providing support resources. Again, this is a thing that could be done as like, hey, there's this organization called Association of Clinicians for the Underserved, and they have a ton of resources. Maybe get on their newsletter and like reach out to them if you need training on a specific thing or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, this is part of what we're doing is, again, we're onboarding them to within our organization as a whole. So we do want to highlight this toolkit or resource from the Star Center. It's our onboarding checklist, and it, like so many of our resources, is a Word document. So it's editable. You can change it. It has some things in there already as like a template, but you can delete those if they're not applicable to your organization or the position you're hiring for. And then there's blank spaces as well that you can add in things. And it has like what the task is, who's responsible, the timeline for getting it done, and then like a sign off of like, yes, I did this. And that can be really helpful again for that accountability piece. So we encourage you to check this out if you haven't already, and feel free as you look at it, you can reach out to us with any questions and we can talk about anything. But we really do encourage you to have an onboarding plan and checklist for every single new employee. And again, like this is pre-made for you. You can fill it out and make it deeper for yourself. And then you've made it and you can just print a new one for every new employee and go through it. Because again, like this is how we create cultures where people feel like they know what they're doing, they know where they're supposed to be, they know what their roles are, and that is all good stuff. Okay, Michelle is sharing links. Great, thank you so much. So does anyone have any questions about that before we move on to breakout rooms? Okay, once you come back from breakout rooms, if anything has come up, you're welcome to share. So we're gonna send you to breakout rooms for 15 minutes. And we'll put these in the chat as well. But our questions are, how do you currently, or how will you going forward, make the onboarding process more than just orientation? And does any of your onboarding expand beyond the department where the employee will work, or even out into the community? And if so, what does that look like? Oh, that's next. So I'm gonna do this. There we go. I'm gonna stop sharing. Just kidding. And then we're gonna put you all in breakout groups. But right before we do that, I'm gonna put this in the chat because I think then you'll be able to see them afterwards. But I might have to.
Yeah, as long as it's in the chat, they can still see it.
So yeah, we can get those groups. Yeah, great. And we'll see you in like 15 minutes. I always have this panic that people have just left, but no, here they are. All right. Welcome back, everyone. I hope your time with your colleagues was useful. Is there anything anyone wants to share around what y'all talked about in terms of onboarding? What are folks doing that feels good, or what are people planning on doing?
Well, I was in a team. I'm gonna go ahead and take a crack at it. I was in a team with Terry, a couple of people. Oh my gosh, I'm having this freeze moment. We kind of like share the way Nathan, thank you. He's there, Terry is there, and Jason kind of shared a little bit as far as process is concerned. Shared some ideas, what goes, what works, what doesn't work, and just collaborate a little bit. So some good stuff there. And I'm hoping when this cohort ends, that we'll have an opportunity to some kind of collect information and kind of share some ideas, because at the end of the day, we're all part of the same team trying to accomplish the same focus and same goals. And those who are fairly new or needs assistance, that's willing to share their information and vice versa, so I had a great breakout session. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. We love to hear that. And yeah, maybe we can create a post within the dashboard that is on this subject, and folks can share into there of like, yeah, what's working, what are you struggling with, anything innovative that's really been successful, things like that. All right, great. Anyone else want to share?
It was mentioned that we should have someone teach us how to source on Indeed and on LinkedIn like really well, if that's possible.
Can you tell me more?
So I've talked to some people and they've mentioned that they don't like really know how to use like Indeed or LinkedIn to its full capacity. And I know that I don't either. I've just been YouTubing as much as I can, but I think that would be like a really good thing to teach people how to use those.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really good feedback for us to have, and we can make a note of that, Michelle.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is the first time we've actually heard that feedback on like the specific website. So yeah, we're gonna definitely make a note of that. Thank you.
And then yeah, Sharon, go for it.
Because Karina and I were talking about using the tools, using something like Facebook to build community. I was really interested to see, who's building, an online community to do some recruitment. I feel like I've got a really small environment here in Seattle, which I know sounds kind of counterintuitive, but a small county of people who understand FQHCs. So having the Star 2 Center help to bring those kinds of things together, that kind of education would be really helpful, because for us, onboarding and orientation hasn't been an issue. Onboarding isn't an issue. Retention is the big issue. And the way to counteract retention is to build loyalty and, while they're starting. So, but this has been great. Thank you.
Part of this cohort, one of the things I learned is the pay transparency, right? I know that no one's really want to talk about this because there's a stigma behind it. But in all fairness, when I look at posting for the BHT in particular, I would I just put the range. This is, I know what the minimum is, and this is what I just put the range in there. And then believe it or not, I'm actually getting some candidates to look. I said, okay, it's really based on experience, right? Because I cannot say, well, this individual is going to make this amount of money. It's really based on the training and your skill set. So I just have, I'm being transparent. I put it out there, and so far we're really getting some traction there, which is good. Also, I want to just put it out there that Handshake is awesome. Okay, and I know we all have limited budgets to work with, but I know what I find in LinkedIn is that it's in order for you to actually put yourself out there, that you have to have some registration fees involved. And that's not something that we're willing to do, although we do have a good HRIS system that posts to all these little sites, but predominantly Indeed is one of them. And also have a robust website, career website through your internally that can actually get some, constantly updating that information. So that's just my little tips and tricks out there, folks.
Love that.
And Helen, can I just mention something really quickly? Because I think as all of you were talking, I mean, you have such good ideas and you're sharing so much. Maybe we could do like an opt-in if any of you want, where we'll share with the whole cohort your contact information. So then at the same time, on your own, if you want to reach out to each other, I can talk with Mariah and Helen about that. But it just got me thinking because you were sharing such good things right now, and the things you specifically need, which is wonderful.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it sounds like it's very productive breakout groups. And yeah, I love the sharing and thinking about the different ways that we can continue to be supporting each other and sharing this cool information. So that's awesome. So now we're going to talk about career pathways and professional development, because this is another piece of that recruitment and retention of anyone, of course, but specifically with mental health providers. This is something that's really important. So well-defined and clearly communicated pathways for advancement can really encourage employee satisfaction and retention, especially among diverse and underrepresented workers. So it's important that we're, building these out, and then again, advertising them as part of our recruitment strategy. But again, that this is part of, once you have someone, part of that retention piece. So employees are generally more engaged when they believe that their employer is concerned about their growth and provides avenues to reach individual career goals while fulfilling the organization's mission. And so a career development path provides employees with that ongoing mechanism to enhance their skills and knowledge that can lead to the mastery of their current job, or promotions or transfers to new or different positions. And so implementing career pathways can also have a direct impact on the entire organization by improving morale, career satisfaction, motivation, productivity, and responsiveness in meeting different needs organizationally or departmentally. There are kind of different ways of thinking about it, of career paths sort of encompass that idea of like, there are different ways we could go. We build on this skill, and there are different positions, and it can take those varied forms of career progression, including a traditional ladder, dual career ladders, a horizontal lattice career progression outside the organization, encore careers, etc. Whereas then career ladders is sort of that like progression of jobs at an organization, specific occupational fields ranked from highest to lowest. So there's just different ways to sort of think about it, and it really depends on your organization's needs, the employees' interests and needs. And so this is something to have a conversation about. And again, it can always like shift and change, and we don't need to be set in one way. But thinking specifically about behavioral health, mental health providers, some types of promotion to be considering is that horizontal promotion, which involves an increase in the title and pay for an employee, but with little to no change in responsibility. So moving from a manager to a senior manager, or a specialist to a senior specialist, therapist to a lead therapist, where we're saying like, hey, you're doing a great job at the job you're doing, and we want to recognize that. So we're going to give you a little bump in both title and money. We're going to add maybe like a few things to your plate, but it's not like a huge amount. And then there's that vertical promotion, that's that upward movement, more senior job titles, those higher salaries, but with the higher salary comes that more responsibility. And so this is what we more typically think of when we think of a promotion. So again, moving from manager to a director, director to the C-suite, something like that. But I think it is important to think about the horizontal promotions as we think about like what that pathway can look like, is we don't all have to always jump from like here to here. We can go like here and then here. It's like traversing a mountain versus rock climbing is a good way to think about it. I think of like, we're taking our time and we're making sure that we're ready as we go up versus like ba-boom. And we have the tools for each of them, but we just need to make sure that we're planning for that and doing it well. And then a dry promotion is something we want to avoid, which is giving folks new responsibility of a new title, but without the benefits that come with it. So without a pay bump, without those additional, without salary, with sometimes even without a title increase. But we want to make sure that we're not doing dry promotions. And so again, these are things that we see again in general, but specifically with the behavioral health field, is often people are given a lot more responsibility without any more pay. And so we want to make sure that we're avoiding that. And as you're building your career paths and what they look like, here's some key steps. Leaders can clearly articulate how talent can move from those entry level to higher wage roles within the organization. Creating strong career paths starts with determining what those required skills and competencies to reach the various roles and or career stages even are. And then next, the leadership team can identify available training and professional development resources for employees to gain those skills. So again, we're not just saying like, hey, you need to be doing this, but we're saying, hey, for you to move on to the next level within our organization, we want you to be doing this, and here's a place that you can get trained in it, or like these are some options that you could start engaging with to prepare you for the next step in the role. We're never guaranteeing that you're going to get it, but like we want to make sure that if you're interested in this upward mobility, we're making sure that you're fully supported in it, including that you know what skills you're supposed to be building and where you can be building them. And then finally, clearly and consistently communicating that information to employees enables them to make informed decisions and pursue growth opportunities at the organization. So again, we want it to be really clear what the skills and competencies people have to get to have those next steps within their careers. And then, we want to support them as they go through it. Michelle, it seemed like you maybe had something to add? No. Okay, great.
No, it was the reflection. It like hit my head. So, sorry.
And then it's all, as we're developing our employees, as we're creating those career pathways, it's also important to make sure that we're investing in a development strategy that has those career ladders and advancement opportunities, talent development and succession planning to prepare and train a diverse and inclusive group of employees for an upward career trajectory that leads to the successful and equitable achievement of leadership positions. So often when we see diversity represented or the community represented within our staff, it is reflected in many different levels, but not in the C-suite or in the executive suite, or even in the, management supervisor suite. And so we want to make sure that as we're creating these career ladders, we're valuing experience. We are, again, being really clear with everyone what it's going to take for them to move up within their career, and making sure that we are offering those opportunities in an equitable way. And then again, getting specific and drilling down on the needs for behavioral health providers. Hold on, I have to sneeze.
I've been sneezing all day from allergies, so
We got
bless
there.
you.
Just a thing, like, it's one thing to sneeze in front of people live, but like, you all don't need to see just my face sneeze. So thank goodness for turning off the camera. Anyway, for behavioral health folks specifically, this is some guidance on some things to think about as you're providing that support for continuing educational units or continuing medical educations, continuing medical education. So our suggestion is to make sure that there's 5 to 7 paid days off annually to attend continuing education conferences, and that you're providing $1,500 to $2,000 per provider to cover those expenses. And again, make sure that you're advertising that as part of your recruitment, or in the interview process, say like, this is a benefit that we have for behavioral health providers because we know that it's really critical that you do this continuing education and that there's financial support for it. And again, it's not that these folks get 5 to 7 extra paid days off that other people don't get. It's that they have 5 to 7 extra days where they're going to be educated and continue to grow and get better at their jobs.
And I
So-
did want to mention just really quickly, this estimation and suggestion came from a clinical social worker that we've worked with before. They are in a health center in Michigan, and this is the policy that their health center has and what they've seen with some other health centers. So we also wanted to make sure that it was, realistic to how it would be in health centers. So just to give that background of where this came from.
This isn't just us like tossing numbers out in the wind. Yeah, for sure. And I want to call people's attention to the point you made in the chat, Michelle, which thank you so much, is to keep those behavioral health folks in mind when you're looking for those leadership positions, even outside the behavioral health department. But these folks are, of course, they're skilled at their specific area, but again, like, their whole job is to understand humanity and human interaction and relationships. And so these folks can be really good leaders in other departments as well, and they can be incredible executives and C-suite staff. So yeah, it's important to, again, when we're thinking about what that career path looks like, it doesn't have to only be within the behavioral health department. So that's sort of the end of our content on that, but I did want to have a little bit of a group discussion. So as we're finishing this up, what's going to be your first step towards implementing some of the things we've learned here? What are folks excited to jump into as we wrap up this 4-week
Well, for at least for our organization, I really want to focus on the Jedi component of it. I want to expand ours a little bit, making it more, I mean, we're practicing it, but I don't think that we are communicating it to the mass audience when it comes to our recruitment effort. And also some of the creating a balance with regards to, as far as the staffing needs, the budget, that sort of thing, and making sure that that is board approved, and also to have a buy-in of the stakeholders as well. I know that's been, I don't know about you folks, but I know that's a struggle on our part, to have something concrete, and that HR recruitment is not an afterthought because at the end of the day, we are the one that actually making sure that the organization have the resources they need to be successful and meeting the demands of the community that we serve, right? That's my takeaway.
Yeah, I love that. What are other folks going to focus on, take away? What are some of the things you're looking forward to implementing? You can put it in the chat too if you don't want to unmute.
I feel like I want to go into my social work mode of like, let's just go into complete silence until it's awkward and then someone will speak.
Honestly, for me,
Okay.
there's been so much valuable information that's been presented here that my next step is literally going to be to go and watch all these videos again, compile all the resources, and then make a decision on the next step.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's great. Review, compile. Yeah, that's a very logical and thought out way to do it.
And this actually brings up a really good point. Like, we're still here to help you directly after this, so you can contact us. With any of the homework assignments, if at any point you're like, hey, can you review this? We are more than happy to do that. We're still doing the reviews for the job announcements. I know somebody had sent one. I do need to go through that. Just please excuse the things being a little bit chaotic as all of you know, I'm sure. But yeah, you can still reach out to us if you need anything. So
For sure. I love that you made that point. I'm gonna make it again later too. All right. Well, as you're thinking about what your next steps are there any final questions? Again, not final forever, like Michelle said, we're here, but is there anything that came up from this content or that has come up from previous ones that you didn't get a chance to share?
It's been great. Thank you. We have to do this again.
Yeah, awesome.
we do this every year.
Yeah,
So
we have
Not
Yeah.
enough, not enough.
I know, trust me, we got the most applications that we've ever gotten. It was 68. So we had a really hard time selecting, and all of you like really stood out. So thank you for
Well, I thank you.
yeah.
Great. Well, again, as you're thinking about what your next steps are, these are a few relevant resources we wanted to call out. Like Michelle said, you're welcome to you're welcome to reach out around any of the assignments. We're happy to look at job announcements. If you're like reviewing your job interview questions, we'll look at those. We do have this compensation bundle that has a bunch of resources on compensation. We also have an e-learning course that's specifically on onboarding strategies. And then there is a series on considerations for the retention and recruitment of mental health providers. So those are some very specifically to this resources. And then I can't say it enough. You can send us your job announcements and we'll look them over. We actually really like it. But yeah, you're welcome to send us those if you want us to. We do have one more coursework assignment for you. It's basically just to look at the onboarding checklist and start to fill it out for yourself. Again, like because we don't have a check-in or a specific check-in again, this one's sort of like on your own timeline, but we do really encourage you to look at that and see where things can fit for you. And again, it's how many slides can we say it in? You can send us your job. I didn't realize quite how many I had put it on. And then again, the discussion board will be there in perpetuity. You're welcome to check in on it whenever. Download the resources, look at the discussion board. We'll start a couple of those discussions that we said we would and put a couple more resources on there. You can communicate with each other, with us. It's always there and it's good. There will be a post-assessment link provided now-ish, I think. Unless I'm mistaken. And then we talk about this like at the beginning, but just to remind you, in 3 to 6 months, we'll be following up with you with an email, and there will also be a link in that email for you to fill out. But it's also a chance, like if you haven't reached out to us or vice versa in that amount of time and something has come up, that's a really good time to reach out and be like, hey, I started this, but I got stuck on whatever, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, feel free to, you're always, like Michelle said, you're always welcome to reach out to us for that one-on-one technical assistance or to chat or to check in, but within 3 to 6 months, we will specifically be reaching out. So you can be on the lookout for that. And then, yeah, as always, Mariah's tabs froze, but the evaluation link will be in the chat soon. And we hope that you will fill that out. Or no, it's not in the chat. Sorry, it's a poll. I know this.
We may need to email the post assessment. I think if y'all remember in the first one we did like where you currently were, and then the post assessment would be like where you are now or going. And then since I know Mariah was having some computer issues, we can always just email it to everyone.
Okay, yeah. So this is like the evaluation of this session that you do every time, and then the post assessment is like for the whole series. So yeah, if you could fill out the evaluation, that'd be great. Again, we always like to share tons of resources. As a reminder, our workforce symposium is coming up at the end of April, and registration is now open, which is new information. So I put the link, and there's a QR code too if you want to check it out. It's in Nashville. It's at a really fun, cute hotel that has a lot of Dolly Parton stuff going on.
Dolly Parton theme. You
Yeah.
sleep under a Dolly Parton framed picture.
Yeah, it's incredible. You feel like you're being guarded and watched by an angel named Dolly Parton every night. You should come for the content, but the hotel is pretty great too. So yeah, there's more information on that there. And then I don't actually have a slide for this, but be on the lookout. We are about to announce the call for abstracts for our conference. It'll happen probably at some point next week. So be on the lookout for that. If you have some innovative things going on and you want to present at our conference, that's held in DC, I believe this year in
First week of August.
First week of August. Great. It's always either end of July or early August, and I always forget. So yeah, highly encourage folks to apply to that. It's a fun conference, and we'd love to hear what's going on at your health centers. And that's kind of all that you haven't already seen. This is our, you know this slide, this slide. Thank you all so much for being part of this learning collaborative with us. I really enjoyed learning from all of you and being part of this group. And so, yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. All of you were amazing.
Thank you. Goodbye.
All right, perfect.
Bye,
Have a
everybody.
wonderful rest of your
Bye.
Bye.